Salvete omnes, and welcome to Caesar's Gallic Wars, Book 4, Section 25. When last we left Caesar and his army, they were landing on the shores of Britain with great difficulty. And in this passage, Caesar is going to bring help to the soldiers, and he is going to tell the story of one inspiring soldier. So we're going to start off with this phrase, quod ubi Caesar animad vertit, naves longas quarum et species erat barbaris in usitatior et motus ad usum expeditior, paulum remo veri ab oneraris navibus, et remis incitari, et ad latus ad pertum hostium constitui, atque inde fundis sagittis tormentis hostes propelli ac submoveri usit, quae res magno usui nostris fuit. Okay, so in this passage, we're actually going to need to go down all the way down here to get our main verb, usit. Usit is the word that means to order, right? And when you think of the word to order, you want to think about infinitives. So we're going to take a look here. We have a relative clause. So I'm going to bracket that because that's going to be a little addition. So after our relative clause, we start with our main clause, which is usit, our main sentence, usit, and then we're going to be looking for our infinitives. I see some infinitives here, remo veri, incitari, constitui, propelli, and submoveri. So what you want to do with this is you actually want to, if you remember your infinitives, I'll start off with an easy one. So we'll take a look at the verb movere, right? So if you had movere, and you wanted to make that an infinitive, let me erase. What you do is you erase the last E, right? And then you make it an I, right? If you have a verb like legere, which is the verb to read, if it's a third conjugation verb, that's an Legere. What you do to make this a passive infinitive, and the reason I'm saying this is because these all look passive to me, is I take my passive, I erase my ERE, and then I make that an I, and I wind up with legi. That's an L over there, by the way, Legi. Sorry, I'm going to learn how to write better with my mouse. So we're going to be seeing some passive infinitives. So not just to something, but to be something, to be blanked. All right. So when Caesar noticed this, and this quote refers back to what happens in the past, it's called a connecting relative. So when Caesar noticed this, meaning this, that they were having difficulty on the shore, referring back to the last passage, anytime you see a relative pronoun starting off a passage, you can actually translate it as this oftentimes because it refers back to something in the previous passage. So when Caesar noticed this, he ordered, so we're going to go all the way down to he ordered. He ordered the naves longas, the long ships, the warships. Okay, then we have a relative clause. Quarum. Quarum here is a genitive, right? Whose. He ordered the long ships whose appearance was more unfamiliar in usitatior. You're going to see that eor there, right? That's going to make it comparative. Whose appearance was more unfamiliar to the barbarians and whose motion was more convenient, expeditior, like expeditious, right? More convenient for use. This is just a little prep phrase here. So when Caesar noticed this, he ordered the long ships whose appearance was more unfamiliar to the barbarians and whose motion was more convenient for use. He ordered them to, so in this case, we're going to say here to be. He ordered them to be moved back, paulum, a little, to be moved back a little from the burden ships, the cargo ships. I always think of like a burden, an onus, to be removed back a little from the cargo ships, to be set in motion, incitare, you think of incite, they used to incite the horses, urge on, to be set in motion with oars, good, and we need another infinitive, to be stationed, constitui, at the open latus, the open side. Latus, by the way, here is a neuter. Apertum just describes it. latus, laterus, neuter side. We get words like lateral from here. And to be stationed at the open side of the enemy. Okay? So that's all governing the word order. And from there, he ordered again the enemy. So first he's ordering the long ships in our green here. Then he's going to order the enemy. Let's see if I can get my highlighter here, my focus mouse. Okay, so then he's going to order the hostes, the enemy. He's going to order the enemy to be driven back and to be moved back by fundis, by slings, by means of arrows, and by means of all kinds of torments or catapults. So he orders the enemy to be driven back and to be moved by slings, by arrows, by catapults. Okay? Which thing, quae res, remember the word res that shows up a lot, which thing was a magno usui, a great use. Notice this word use, we had it over here, usuum, a great use to our men. Okay, so this ending here looks a little different. Usui, and magno, these are datives. This is a dative, and this is a dative. This is called a dative of purpose. And you might remember you have a dative of purpose with a dative of reference. Here we have a dative of reference, a dative of purpose, and a dative of reference create a construction called a double dative. So this thing was a great use to our men. Okay, so continuing here, you can see that this is an example of Roman reenactors, and this is the actual battle line that they would often be used to traveling in. So you could see why coming out of boats and being on the shore and not being in formation could cause great difficulty for them. So we're going to continue to talk about how the barbarians perceived what Caesar was doing. Nam et navium figura et remora motu et in usitato genere tormentorum per moti barbari constituerunt ac paulum modo pedem ritulerunt. Okay, so we don't have much of a reaction from the barbarians. They were moved by this, but they only retreated a little. Okay, so we're going to start here. Nam. Nam just means for. It's just a conjunction. For the barbarians, the barbarians here is going to be our subject. For the barbarians having been moved. For the barbarians having been moved by, right? So by the figura, by the figure of the ships, or the appearance of the ships. Figura, we get the word figure, can mean appearance. Again, so you think figure and then you talk about appearance. By the appearance of the ships, notice our yellows here are going to be, or the yellow RNGs are going to be in the genitive. For the barbarians having been moved by the appearance of the ships and by the motion of the oars. So the motion of the oars, remember we don't have natural word order like English, we have Latin word order, so words kind of come after what you actually are expecting. And by the in usitato genere tormentorum, by the unfamiliar genus generis type of weapons or of catapults, the barbarians, having been moved by these things, stood still, constaterunt, and ritulerunt pedem, like literally to bring back their feet, moved back or retreated, modo paulum, only a little. Okay, so they only retreated a little. And nostris militibus cunctantibus, and to our soldiers hesitating. So someone's going to talk to them. This is actually in the dative here. And to our soldiers hesitating, especially, Maxime can translate as especially because of the depth of the sea. This is just a prep phrase. Remember, propter is a preposition, takes the accusative. Here's a genitive here describing the accusative. Especially because of the altitude or the depth of the sea. The one who, gerebat, was carrying the aquila, the eagle, of the 10th Legion, having called upon the gods. Obtestatus, obtestor is a deponent verb. It means to pray upon or call upon. It looks passive, but it translates actively. So we're going to translate this as having called upon the gods that this situation, ea res, remember race can mean situation, matter, thing, that this situation turn out happily for the legion. Okay, and we're going to continue on with the next passage. That this situation, to our men who were hesitating, especially because of the altitude of the depth of the sea, the one who carried the eagle of the 10th legion, having called upon the gods that this turn out, you can notice here, this is a subjunctive, probably in a result clause, because you're saying it turn out, that this thing turn out happily for the legion, said to our men. Okay, so he says, Decilite milites. So we actually have somebody talking, giving some orders here. This is a command in the imperative plural. He says, jump down, soldiers. Nisi vultus aquilam hostibus prodere. Unless, this can mean unless or if not. Keep both of them in your head because sometimes you might need to use one or the other. Here, I think unless works best. Unless you want, from volo vis vults, just second person plural, present, unless you want to betray or to hand over the aquila, which in this case is the eagle, to the enemy. Ego certe meum rei publica atque imperatore officium praestitero. I certainly have shown or will have shown my duty, my officium. So meum goes with officium here. Oops. My duty. I certainly will have shown my duty to the republic and to my general. Okay, so he tells him, come on, get in the water, jump down, do what you have to do. Hoc cum voce magna dixisse, se ex navi projecit atque in hostes aquilam ferre coipit. When he had said hoc, this, so this hoc is the direct object, neuter. When he had said this, again, this is not an ablative absolute because we have a cum here. So cum plus here, a pluperfect subjunctive, create a cum clause. When he had said this with a magna voce, ablative of manner, with a great voice, he threw projecit, like yakio, to throw. He threw himself forward, ex navi, out of the ship, and he began to bring his eagle among the enemy. In plus the accusative can mean into, against, or among, and he began to bring the eagle against the enemy. When he had said this with a great voice, he hurled himself out of the ship, and he began to carry the eagle among the enemy. And here you can see an example of some of the standards that we have. Here's the signum, which is the standard. Each century would have a signum. Here's the vexilla, which is the flag. Each legion would have a flag. And then every legion would also have an aquila, which was the eagle. So you can see that. It's hard to see, but that would look like, that would be an eagle. Here's the eagle bearer saying, come on, soldiers, jump down. Decilite milites. Here's the aquila fair, the eagle bearer, the one who bears the eagle, leading the landing. And here's another example of that. Good examples. You can kind of really see that eagle up there. Okay, so finishing off this passage, tum nostri cohortati inter se, ne tantum dedecus admitteretur universi ex navi desiluerunt. Okay, so then our men, nostri, remember our Caesar saying nostri means our men having been encouraged or exhorted, or having encouraged, not having been, our men having encouraged inter se, among themselves, or encouraged each other, that such a dedecus, that such a disgrace not be allowed. So then our men, having encouraged each other, inter se, that such a disgrace not be allowed, universi, altogether, universally, totally, they all together jumped down ex navi from their ship. Let's see if I can highlight here. So they jumped down ex navi from their ship, universi, altogether. Hos item ex proximis primis navibus cum conspix essent. subsecuti hostibus ad propinquarunt, or ad propinquarerunt. This one has a propinquarunt. They also have that in the text. So that's a shortened form of a propinquarerunt. So let's see how this one works out. Item here means likewise. When cum, they had caught sight of them. So here we have a cum clause, cum plus a pluperfect subjunctive. When they had caught sight of them, ex proximis primus navibus, from the nearest ships, or from the first nearest ships. They followed, subsecuti, or you can say having followed, but you can sometimes take these participles as main verbs and say they followed, and they approached the enemy. They followed and they approached the enemy. Okay, so when, likewise, when from the first closest ships they had caught sight of these men, they followed and approached the enemy. This is an interesting passage right here, an interesting word phrase right here, ex proximis primis navibus. This is the manuscripts of Caesar have some difficulty and things are unreliable here. And so when they can't figure out what the medieval texts say, they actually dagger it. So they put like a dagger on it to show it's not really the greatest dagger. But anyway, they'll dagger the text. You might see it in your text. They'll put daggers around it to show that there is a corruption of the text and they don't know what the manuscripts actually say. So if they're not confident with the reading, and so what we're translating this is as from the first nearest ships, it doesn't really sound right. And so there's some problem with some of the manuscripts as they were copied. So it's just an interesting little side note. All right, I hope that you enjoyed this section about the Aquila Fair, and we will see you next time for section 26 of book 4, Walete.